Welcome back, everyone, to Screenfish Radio. I'm so glad you could join us as we kick off 2022 with our first episode of the new year. And I cannot be more excited about this episode. They said it couldn't be done. The band is back together. Not the Beatles.
Not the three Spider-Men.
Not the three Spider-Men. Almost as powerful. The OG hosts of Seeing and Believing here as well. Obviously, current host Kevin McLenithan and Wade Bearden. I'm so glad you could join me, guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, this has been good. I'm so excited.
Really great to be back on the show. And I have to say, Steve, I'm really happy about you comparing us to the Beatles. I think that is commensurate with Wade's and my skill and stature in the area of podcasting. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I'm Paul and Kevin's Ringo.
Oh yeah. No, I appreciate you. Yeah, at least I'm not George Harrison.
Well, I considered comparing you to Oasis, but I decided to go the Beatles route.
Ooh, that stings.
Which one gets to be Noel? Come on, no. No, guys, I honestly, this is gonna be a lot of fun. I'm glad you could both join me. It is the first episode of the new year, and anybody who has been a longtime viewer of us hopefully knows what that means. It's time, I think, if you'll join me, time to look over some of our favorite moments, movie moments from the year that was.
Well, is Ringo goes first, or?
Sure, Ringo, you can go. Let's give our top 3 movie moments, and why don't you kick us off?
So I have an opportunity to disagree immediately.
That's as it should be. Yeah, I'm happy to kick things off, and I'm happy to kick things off with a movie that I thought was so strange and rewarding that it's just something that I kind of feel like everybody should see and just sort of like try to make sense of. That movie is The Green Knight, and this is David Lowery's adaptation of the medieval poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And it's kind of a revisionist take, and Lowery does a lot of interesting things with it. But the moment that I really found the most interesting from the film was a scene from about maybe like the end of the first act of the film, where Gawain has gotten himself into a little bit of a scrape. He's encountered some highwaymen. They have tied him up, taken all of his gear, and basically left him for dead in a forest. And the moment that I'm thinking of is Lowery's camera is sort of trained on Gawain, sort of struggling against his bonds underneath a tree. And he kind of, for a while, he gives up and he goes limp. And when he does that, Lowery's camera does this 360-degree pan, very patiently, just going in a full circle, starting with its view of Gawain himself and then just panning all around. And when it comes full circle back around to him, instead of Gawain there, it's just a pile of bones. And then the camera kind of reverses that movement, and Gawain reappears when it makes that full circle again. And it's essentially this moment where Gawain is staring his own mortality in the face. And after he does that, he makes the decision, no, I've got to fight. I've got to find a way out of these bonds. I have to continue my quest. And there's just something about the wordless elegance of that shot that I found so compelling, where Lowery does something really similar to what he did in A Ghost Story, which was one of my favorite films of that year. And I think, Wade, it was your favorite film of that year too.
Yeah.
Which is Lowery just has this wonderful patience where he's able to take a very simple image or a very simple shot and compress so much meaning into it and so much time into it. Essentially, in that one 360-degree pan, we fast forward maybe a century into the future. By then, Gawain has died, his body's decomposed, and we're looking at the fate of all men, I guess, which is a theme of the film. And that is just that's what I really love about Lowery's films, is that patience and that ability to really say so much within the span of a very simple shot, and really make the audience grapple with, number one, with what it means, and number two, with what their response is to that meaning. And I don't know, I just really like that shot quite a bit, and I like the film a lot as a whole.
Yeah, I like that whole sequence. It kind of reminds me almost like this darker version of the Barry Lyndon scene, where he's jumped on the road. And whenever, so I watched the movie, part of it again, and made my top 10, and I'm struck by how good of a filmmaker David Lowery is. And you could almost imagine all the ways that scene could go wrong, because it's very much a heavy-handed image, right? It's like him and a pile of bones. And yet it doesn't feel that way. He could have had, the character go to sleep, and then he wakes up and he sees bones, and then it could have just been this weird kind of jump cut. Instead, it's this kind of 360. The world is turning, time is changing. And it really is a good moment. I like that. That's a great scene.
Guys, I can't believe it. I have not seen it yet. And this is one of those films. Yeah, it is high on my list. It was high on my list. It was literally, the press screening date came on. I was ready to go. My kid got sick in the morning. I couldn't go. And I just have not had the chance. But everyone I talk to, first of all, I love Lowery's work. I have every one of his films I'm fascinated with. But everyone I talk to just talks about how stunningly beautiful it truly is. And it is high on my list. I definitely want to check that out for sure.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And I said this in Seeing and Believing's top 10 episode, when I talked about why this was on my top 10 list, is that I feel like it's pretty rare to see a fantasy movie or a movie that's kind of like set in this idealized or alternate medieval setting that is so strange. I love my fantasy films to have strangeness in them, where the world just doesn't feel like our own, and it feels so rare. And I think that's what makes it such a rewarding watch, is because you sit down with it and you expect it to be sort of an Arthurian romance, because that's what the poem is, and Lowery just completely jukes you on it and does something very unexpected with so much of the film. So whenever you do get around to it, you're in for quite an experience.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it. I like that movie a lot. So my pick for one of my favorite moments of the year is from a film that just made my top 10, and I kind of felt like it was underrated this year. It's Ridley Scott's The Last Duel, and the scene that I'm thinking of is the duel scene in The Last Duel, which is good, right? You want the best scene to be the scene that the movie is named after. And I don't want to spoil the duel, but there are three characters, three different versions of a story that's told throughout this movie. And ultimately it comes down to a duel between Ben Affleck's character and Adam Driver's character. Sorry, not Ben Affleck, Matt Damon's character. Ben Affleck is watching. So Matt Damon's character versus Adam Driver's character. And Jodie Comer's character is married to Matt Damon's character, and she's watching. And throughout the film, you begin to understand the weight of this duel and what it means for each character. And even though you know it's coming, it's not until it comes that you truly realize the stakes. And it's fascinating what Ridley Scott does with each of these characters by sharing their story, namely through their lens. It's not a full Rashomon, but it's close. The stories that they tell are the stories that reflect who they kind of want to be deep down. And so you have these two characters fighting. And it's weird because you're watching, you really want one character to win, but you don't really care too much about that character. You want them to win for other reasons. The scene is just it's filmed incredibly. And what I love about this scene is it's a medieval duel that doesn't feel like it's set. It's filmed on this green screen set. You see all the action, you understand what's going on. There are upper hands throughout the duel. One person looks to be winning, and then the other person finds a way to get back on top. And in the end, what I found most compelling is that not only is this good action, but it's action that tells a little bit about each character. It develops each character in the scene. And you don't get that with a lot of movies. You watch a superhero film and you know at the very end it's going to be this huge fight scene, but the characters don't really develop. They're just kind of hitting each other. In this scene, you learn a little bit more about who these characters are and their motivations, which after seeing all of their stories, you wonder how you can learn even more, and yet you really do. An incredibly tense scene. I was holding my 2-month-old son, and I found myself kind of just squeezing his leg, and I was like, oh, I like ease up here. I didn't even realize I was doing it. But yeah, a really great movie, and just a great way to end the film.
Yeah, so this is the part where I do what Steve did for my pick, which is say I have not seen The Last Duel yet, and so I can't offer an opinion on that scene. It's high on my list, and I'm intrigued by this film because, I guess mostly because of the casting. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and Adam Driver are not the people I would have expected Ridley Scott to cast for these roles. And so I'm very intrigued by how they work together, how well they bounce off of each other. And it sounds like this climactic scene that you're talking about really just gives a lot to chew on. So I'm looking forward to catching up with it.
I'll say this too. Ben Affleck he's not one of the three main characters. He is a big character in the film. This is actually one of his best roles in a long time. And I don't want to spoil anything, but he does a fantastic job with what he's asked to do. And like I said, I feel like it is underrated. A lot of people saw Ridley Scott's other film, House of Gucci, and I have yet to see that one, but I really like The Last Duel and hope more people could see it. It's playing on HBO Max, so if anybody has HBO Max, you can find it there.
Yeah, Kevin, there's an amazing moment in this final duel. Wade was talking about them getting back and forth and on top of each other. Where one of them just says, I'm not left-handed, and he takes and all of a sudden that was
huge reversal.
It was, it was a huge reversal. I haven't seen it either. Apparently, I haven't seen movies with swords because I haven't seen Last Duel either. You guys are making me look foolish here. I'm tapping out.
Tapping out. Yeah, no.
Bring us your number 3.
All right,
we gotta get into your picks.
Well, I haven't seen my number 3 either. I haven't seen this movie. No, my number 3 pick is actually from a movie called Pig, which for the average person may not have even heard about, to be perfectly honest, because it's not one of those movies that it's one of those indie movies, of course, that's really got great buzz. But most of the people I know, when I talk to them about it, stare at me blankly. Stars Nicolas Cage as a truffle hunter, and some men come and steal his pig, and he goes back to the city. He's been living as a recluse in the forest, goes back to the city to reclaim his lost pig. And my third favorite moment of the year is actually from the finale of the film, in Pig. I dubbed it The Last Supper. And one of the things I thought was so fascinating about Pig is that if you've seen John Wick and you broke it down structurally, Pig and John Wick are actually very, very, very similar.
Yeah.
And yet they're polar opposite films. They are completely opposite. But just narrative, like Nicolas Cage plays a chef, and as he enters when he walks in a room and someone whispers his name, people get chills, just like John Wick, except John Wick is a killer, and he is a killer in the kitchen. And this final moment, this Last Supper, it's the final duel, if you will, no pun intended, but the final battle. And he cooks him a meal. He cooks the ultimate villain of the film a meal. And you think, okay, he's going to kill him. This is it. He's going to poison it. The whole film has been building to this. And the man breaks down in tears because of the beauty of this meal that he's consuming. And it just shatters him from the inside, not physically, but emotionally. It wells up all these wonderful moments. And it's the ultimate revenge. And I'm so riveted by this film because of moments like this. Because here is a moment where you really truly expect murder to take place. But in fact, what it is he's offered in some ways almost if I were to look at scripture, it would be the moment where he heaps burning coals on his head simply out of a loving experience, a more loving expression. And it broke me. This scene just absolutely broke me because of the sheer beauty of this incredible moment at the finale of the film. And I realize I just gave some spoilers there, but it's just an incredible piece from start to finish.
Pig is... Sorry, Wade, please
amazing.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's an amazing scene. It really is.
Yeah. Pig is my favorite movie of the entire year. My number one, no question in my mind. And a lot of it is because of scenes like the one you just described, Steve. It's sort of like John Wick meets Babette's Feast in a way. It's that final meal is just this incredible vehicle. Not for grace exactly. It's not the same. It doesn't end on the same note that Babette's Feast does, but it really does speak to how for John Wick is a killer. He kills things, he destroys things, and he's well known for that. Nicolas Cage's chef Robin is a creator. He creates, and his revenge and the climactic moment of the film is this great act of creation where he recreates a meal for this antagonist and presents it for him. And it just calls up so many associations, memories for that person. And just really speaks to the power of what a person at the top of their craft can do when they simply focus on not destroying, but creating. I think it's a beautiful scene.
Well, it's fascinating too, because it kind of comes full circle, because, like the dog in John Wick, the pig here, they represent memories of a deceased individual.
Yeah.
And what Nicolas Cage's character Robin does is he gives this man what this man took from him. So he took this pig that was his companion, that somehow it did remind him of his late partner. And he says, okay, I'm going to actually give you an opportunity to remember, to recall memories. And it's a beautiful moment, because like you mentioned, Steve, if you think about this movie, it really does feel like that slow burn type of film that ends in a Tarantino-esque bloodbath. Like, we're just kind of waiting. It's just, okay, it's going to explode at the seams here in a moment. And it doesn't. And it's an amazing twist. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of my favorites of the year, and for moments like that. Kevin, let's get back to you. You're number two.
Well, my number two is also from Pig. And let me reiterate, Pig is my favorite movie of the year. I just love it. And I could easily have put that scene that you had at your number three, Steve. But when I think back about the movie scenes that just really, I was just on the edge of my seat. I was just entranced by what I was seeing on screen, I had to give it to a scene from the middle of the film where Nicolas Cage's character, Chef Robin, is still kind of trying to find out who is responsible for the theft of his prized pig. And that search leads him to this really pretentious upscale restaurant called Eurydice. And the head chef of that restaurant, it transpires, is a man who, back when Robin was an active chef, the owner of Eurydice was kind of like a pasta chef underneath Nicolas Cage's character. And, but now he's the big cheese. And this entire scene is essentially this confrontation between them where, Nicolas Cage, he never raises his voice. He never gets upset. Before I go any further, Nicolas Cage is incredible in this movie, one of the performances of the year. And this scene is part of the reason why I think that is just, there's so much presence in the way Cage holds himself, the way he speaks. He never raises his voice. And he just has a conversation with this guy who, by all rights could be considered an enemy. This is a person who has information that Cage's character wants, that he needs. And this restaurant owner isn't really very forthcoming with that information. But the conversation kind of develops into a moment where Cage's character essentially asks him, what are you doing? Why are you, making all this upscale food for people who don't care about you? He says, the people at the restaurant, the food critics, they're not real. None of it is real. What's real is what do you care about? What is your passion? When you were under me at my restaurant, you used to talk about wanting to open a pub. Why are you doing this instead of that? What happened to your dream? And the reaction of this other chef, played by I think David Nell is the actor's name. He kind of just melts down. He's laughing, and it's exactly the sort of moment where a character is confronted and doesn't quite know how to react. So they react with nervous laughter. And it's just an incredible scene where he breaks down. He admits that an English pub doesn't, like, you can't sell that to food critics. Like, nobody wants to go to there when they want a fancy meal. They want to go to a place where they give you like a single green bean on a plate with some spritzer of lemon on it or something like that. That's what people really are interested in buying. And Nicolas Cage just looks at him and says, we don't get a lot of things to really care about. Why are you doing this? And it's essentially this call to this person who could be an enemy to return to himself. And it's an incredibly suspenseful scene. And at the end, it's a very inspiring scene about, essentially follow your dreams. But the way that Michael Sarnowski's screenplay articulates that is just so wonderful. And I don't know, I can't say enough good things about it. And again, I don't want to spoil too much of it, just because sitting down with this movie is a real treat to see where it zigs where you expect it to zag. And it's wonderful. And that scene is just one example of why.
Yeah. And it could have gone the opposite way. Like, he could be running a pub and Nicolas Cage could have walked in and been like, what are you doing? You're selling hamburgers. Like, why are you doing this? Yeah. And it's not. And he's like, do what you love. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's highbrow or lowbrow, or just do what you enjoy, do what you love, do what you want to do, and do it well. And I love that idea too, is just, instead of creating these hierarchies of like positions and vocations, it's like, do what you feel called to, and do it to the best of your ability. Or as Christians, right, do it to the glory of God. And it's a great scene. It's a really funny scene too. It's like, it's just this mixture of like just humor, but it's also, I don't know if you'd say heartbreaking and emotional. It's just a lot of emotions at once. And it's a great scene.
It's just got that incredible, like, weird swirl of tones. Like it's funny and kind of grotesque and suspenseful and inspiring. And I think the way Sarnowski directs that scene is just, you don't know as an audience member, like, what should I be feeling here? And that, I think, is just such a rare quality for a movie to have, where the audience just is, it's so uniquely itself that the audience can't easily put it into a box. And I just love that.
Honestly, the film itself is a meal. Like, the film itself is one of these things that just every moment of it is just like, what is that? And I will say, though, I did not realize that the culinary underground world was so complex.
They have like the fight clubs and black market pigs and all sorts of things.
It's like the Continental. I mean, I tell you, it's John Wick with a culinary education.
And I love the cover, the Bruce Springsteen cover at the end too. I'm on fire. It's perfect. It's great. So I love Pig. I think Pig was my number 3 favorite film of the year. My number 2 favorite film of the year was Spielberg's West Side Story. And Steve, we had a chance to talk about this film a few weeks back. I think I had mentioned, or maybe you mentioned in our review, that the movie opens in what looks like a shot from Saving Private Ryan, destruction. And then slowly the film just really kind of explodes into color. And early on in the movie, I love the scene where the 2 gangs get together at the school mixer. So you've got the Sharks and you've got the Jets. And it's here where I feel like Spielberg really just lets us have it for the first time. And so you've got the Jets, and they are doing a version of like a ballroom type dance. And then you have the Sharks, they're doing like the mambo. And Spielberg, the way that he shoots his movies just fits so well into the musical genre. Long takes, wide shots where he lets people act. And I'm reminded too of just scenes in previous films where instead of cutting from one character to the next, he just lets them both kind of talk it out. And in this movie, especially this scene, he lets these characters just kind of dance it out. And if you think about what a musical is, you think about the dancing in a musical. The dancing is this outward representation of their inward emotions. And that's on full display in West Side Story. These characters are kind of just exploding with angst. They're exploding with fear. There's also joy there. And that makes its way into the choreography and into this sort of like dance battle. And before we even get to the rumble, we can see what a battle would look like, but it's in the confines of a mixer. The colors are beautiful. The swooping shots are beautiful. And then that scene kind of transitions into the meet cute with Tony and Maria's character. They meet behind the bleachers. And I love what Spielberg does. He kind of gives us an idealized version of that setting and of the set. And they meet and talk for the first time. I think there's a lot of chemistry in that scene. And then later it cuts and there's just bleachers. Just an amazing scene, a fun scene, and a scene that foreshadows the violent underpinnings of this setting. I love this movie. It was nice to be able to go to the theater and watch this, and I don't know, it felt very cinematic, and I felt like an older individual saying they just don't make them like this anymore. But a fantastic movie and one of my favorites of the year, and that's my favorite scene from that film.
Yeah, West Side Story. Gosh, watching that movie, I was just so grateful that Spielberg was making it. Just this, this master of really, of just, he's a master of his craft, right? He knows exactly how to create an effect. He knows how to marshal all the resources at his command to make something great. And I was just so grateful that in a year where we actually had a lot of musicals, that we had Spielberg to come along and kind of show everyone how it's done. And
yeah,
I mean, that scene that you were talking about is a great one. And I mean, there's a lot of just wonderful scenes where, especially the editing, I just loved the editing in this film, where Spielberg just knows how to capture exactly enough of a shot to give it momentum and to propel us into the next shot, but still allow us to see all the choreography and the acting and singing. I don't know. I think it's a really strong film, and yeah, I like it. I like it quite a bit.
Like the definition of transparent editing, right? That goes with the flow of the film. And Kevin, we talked about In the Heights. I wasn't a huge fan of it. It's fascinating to watch that movie and then to watch this one. And you don't notice some of the more technical qualities of In the Heights and some of the cuts until you watch West Side Story, and you're like, oh wow, like that's the way to do it. Like that's the way to create momentum from shot to shot, scene to scene. And yeah, it is interesting. You have those musicals, and Steven Spielberg is like, yeah, I've never done one before. Might as well try my hand at it.
Yeah, and In the Heights, I think the contrasting West Side Story with In the Heights really shows the difference between just having a lot of stuff on screen versus knowing how to use all the stuff on screen. I think that's kind of like In the Heights was interesting to look at times, but I just didn't feel like it cohered into this wonderful, seamless experience the way Spielberg's film did. Yeah, I don't know. We could keep talking about that for a long time, but it's a good pick.
Yeah. West Side Story is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, every shot feels like it tells a story without any dialogue. It's just really well put together, seamless. It's just beautiful. Love the pick. Okay, so my number 2 pick. This is why I love movie moments. It wouldn't be in my top 10 films of the year. It's a little independent film called Spider-Man: No Way Home. And
never heard of it.
I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah, it stars Nicolas Cage, and no, it's.
I wish. The other Spider-Man movie, the multiverse movie, had Nicolas Cage.
He could have.
Be Still My Heart.
No, honestly, No Way Home. I know, like, Marvel films are often their own thing. You consume them at your own risk, but there was something unique about No Way Home, and there is a moment in No Way Home, of course, with the 3 Spider-Men, and they arrive on the rooftop together, and it's this incredible. Tom Holland is standing face to face with 2 generations of the Spider-Verse, if you will, with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. They're standing on the roof, and they're speaking to him about loss and trying to walk him through this moment of grief. And I picked this moment and put it so highly for a couple of reasons. For the sheer fun of it, for the sake of, this was a moment that as a fan was never supposed to happen. Like, this was just this is a fanboy's absolute dream to have everyone together. Of course, I admit that. But the moment itself, actually, the thing that I thought was so special about it is that it worked. I felt that in this conversation, it elevated these 2 former Spider-Men beyond a glorified cameo to part of his Tom Holland's emotional arc, part of his grooming into becoming a hero by sharing their experience. And Tobey Maguire specifically in this one takes on almost the role of mentor for a film, where he started sharing his experience and saying, look, I've been there. And I really thought, like, I saw the film twice in the theater. And the second time I thought, it must have been just the hype. Maybe I just enjoyed it because all the hype and all the fun around it. I really thought this moment was one that stuck. And I thought, for a Marvel film, there are so few moments in the Marvel franchise, which I would say these are the moments that stuck for me for that year. I've liked them. I very much like them. But it's very, very rarely I would put a moment this high where I would say I thought this was a moment that mattered this year. And so that's the moment that I picked. Don't all talk at once.
I was getting choked up just hearing you talk about it. The Spider-Man.
Kevin's just trying to choke. He's just choking.
Wade is choking up, and I'm choking back. No, I like, you know, I like Spider-Man, and I think that especially a scene that brings together the three most recent Spider-Man on screen, like that's just going to be inherently an interesting scene to watch. And I make no secret of the fact that I'm a huge I'm in the bag for Tobey Maguire's take on the character. And so, you know, it's hard not to feel some affection for that moment, even, you know, even if it is kind of in the midst of a cinematic project that I'm not the biggest fan of in the form of the MCU. I like my Spider-Man. I like my Tobey Maguire, and I like Tom Holland too. His take on the character as well. So yeah, like I'm not going to cast any shade on that pick.
Yeah, it's weird because when the villains get together in that movie, I thought the movie was at its worst. It just, the script was kind of messy. But the three Spider-Men, it really did work for me. They were able to really take the momentum of their character arcs and kind of pull that together. And it was funny, and it was charming. And then just the fanboy inside of me was like, oh, cool. Like, we get to see Tobey Maguire again. And I like Andrew Garfield. I don't really like his Spider-Man movies, but I do like his character and his take on Spider-Man. And so being able to see them together, I had the biggest smile on my face. And I've only seen it once, but yeah, I'll watch it again just for those moments. And I that's a fun pick.
I admit, I mean, Andrew Garfield, he had a year. Like when you look at the films of the last 6 months that he has put out, he's had a year. And the thing that struck me about him in this one is, I mean, his movies are terrible. I don't think his Spider-Man movies are very good. I think that he is good. But I think when in this particular moment, I think all three actors continued to sort of, they weren't just, again, like I said, they weren't just in it. Like, there's actual moments that help his Spider-Man within the film. Like, there's the and I think you know, you talked about Last Duel, that final battle, actually there's actual character development amongst the fight scene, which is not normal for these things. So I really thought it worked. So but it's my only blockbuster pick in this. So anyway.
No, it's hey. I thought it was good. I almost had Endgame in my top 10 a couple years ago, just because every once in a while an MCU movie will just kind of hit me and I'll be like, oh, I really did like that. And I liked a lot of scenes from this No Way Home.
Yeah, it was fun. Well, guys, before we get to our number one, we have a few other people, a few friends of the show that have stopped by who would like to give us their favorite movie moment of 2021. So before we do ours, I'd like to let them go first.
Hi, this is Jolie from Toronto Film Files. My favorite movie moment from the past year has to be one of the final scenes from 8-Bit Christmas. 8-Bit Christmas was directed by a Canadian and was also partially shot in the GTA. In my favorite movie moment, the young hero Jake Doyle, for the entirety of the movie, has been desperately trying to obtain a Nintendo, knowing his parents probably won't get it for him for Christmas. However, in the end, his father ends up surprising him with a beautiful handmade treehouse in their backyard. This treehouse ends up becoming the hub for Jake's friends and family for many, many years to come. It's a beautiful, uplifting, joyful scene. And not only does it remind Jake of the true meaning of Christmas and togetherness, it also reminds us of those meanings as well.
Steve, you know me. I can't give you just one. I got two really special moments from the last year. The first one is my first time back in the theater in 18 months. It was a press screening. I was going to see James Wan's *Malignant*. There were 7 of us in the theater, but there may as well been 7,000 people. There's a reveal in there of who the killer is that is unlike anything else you're going to see in a movie anytime soon, and it just knocked my socks off. I loved the movie. I loved being there. It was a very special moment. My second one is maybe more relatable to everyone who's been stuck at home watching the movie. In the Heights is my favorite movie of the year. There's that spectacular opening number. I was sitting down watching the film, eating with my partner, and once the film started up, we realized we stopped eating, we stopped chewing, we stopped breathing. We were just mesmerized by what was happening on the screen. Every time I put that movie on, my heart smiles a little bit, and just seeing it for the first time was exhilarating. I'm never going to forget it. Those are my 2 moments of the year.
Okay, so Steve Norton asked me for my favorite movie or most significant movie moment of 2021. A nice switch from Best Picture of the Year. So I'm just going to leap way over into left field, jump over the obvious choices like The Power of the Dog, which is a great movie, Drive My Car, Licorice Pizza, all movies that you got to see. And go to a small Canadian genre flick called Vicious Fun. Now, the scene in that film that did it for me is when the protagonist, and he is a horror film critic, and he's just had his heart broken by the roommate that he secretly loves. This is played by Evan Marsh. He discovers he's accidentally infiltrated a support group for serial killers. And he uses that opportunity, instead of running, he seizes the opportunity to pitch his unsold horror script. I'm not giving it justice by this description, but it is one of the funniest moments. That look on his face when he thinks, am I going to run? Or, well, no, I'm going to use this horror script that I wrote to good purpose. There's another one that I liked, and it's far less, let's say, out to left field. In fact, it's Andrew Garfield. His name is going to come up a lot during the Oscar award season for Tick, Tick, Boom. And there is a song in there where he decimates an entire relationship in a very fun and playful song, and that is from Tick, Tick, Boom. 2 great moments that I loved in cinema in 2021.
It's Jolie Levac. I wanted to talk about my 2021 movie moment. It had to be from TIFF. I saw a movie called Violet, which was written, directed, and produced by Justine Bateman. And I was so lucky to actually talk to Justine Bateman about this amazing piece. It's really about living in fear and negative self-talk and mental health. And I found it very, very relevant in my life, and I think the lives of many other people who kind of get wrapped up in their day-to-day lives but are really struggling inside. And I remember there was this sort of aha moment that Olivia Munn's character had closer to the end of the film, where she kind of comes into her own a little bit more and realizes that she doesn't need to live in fear anymore. She doesn't need to um, bend to other people's will. And there's actually a little snippet of my review that I wanted to read about it. It says, the film normalizes the fact that it's okay to grow, change, and be selfish in order to do what's best for yourself. It's relatable and important. Despite the more despondent tone of the film, I felt really hopeful at the end of it. It reminded me to trust my instincts. It's okay to say no and speak your mind. We don't always have to censor ourselves in fear of the response of others. And I just thought that that this film and the way that Olivia Munn's character grew in the piece was very important.
All right, well, boys and girls, it's been yet another trip around the sun, and we have to talk once more about our favorite movie moments of 2021. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am not only the editor and publisher over at InTheSeats.ca, your favorite place, or one of your favorite places anyway, for all your movie news, reviews, and everything else in between, but I'm also the host and producer of In the Seats With, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, and so very much more on your favorite podcast platforms. Before I tell you my movie moment of the year, movie moment of the year, I got to thank Steve Norton and all the team over at screenfish.net for allowing me to take part in this. But my favorite movie moment of 2021 came on a Sunday. Well, it's the song Sunday from Tick, Tick, Boom, starring Andrew Garfield and directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda on Netflix now, which is the story of Jonathan Larson, who people know from Rent, and it is a fantastic fantastic, really sort of awe-inspiring musical that you can really get behind. And it's this moment is, like I said, the musical moment Sunday that happens right in the middle of the film, where he's serving people in the diner, but the diner is filled with Broadway legends and everyone breaks out into song. It's a pivotal point in the film, and it's a beautiful number as well, and it really sort of gets you into the second half of what's going on with the story, and it's just really a fantastic moment, which I was lucky enough to get to see on the big screen, ironically, since it is a Netflix film. But it was a beautiful moment, and I think it's one of those ones that's going to stay with me for a while, especially as we head into 2022. So everyone stay safe, have fun, and keep on watching.
Thank you all for, honestly, that was great. Thank you everyone for participating. It's so great to have Victor Stiff, Dave Voigt, Jolie Featherstone, Julie Levac, and Thom Ernst all share their movie moment as well. But here we are, guys. Number one. Go ahead.
Number one.
All right. So we were talking kind of at the beginning of the segment about how our favorite movie moments don't necessarily correspond to our favorite movies. Like there are some, the nice thing about doing things this way, rather than just sort of counting down our favorite movies of the year, is that we get to highlight some off the beaten track picks, or maybe, we get to talk about movies that aren't really so much in the conversation. Like, everybody's talking about Pig, everybody's talking about West Side Story, those are kind of consensus favorites. But the fun of doing a list like this is to maybe pick something that's not a consensus favorite and really highlight some wonderful work in it. And my favorite scene of the year is from a film that I think is definitely flawed, but I found very interesting. It wasn't really anywhere near my favorites of the year, but there is one scene from it that I think is maybe the best just single bit of isolated filmmaking craftsmanship that I saw all year. And that would be from Edgar Wright's film Last Night in Soho. This is a movie about a young woman who moves to London, who's going to go to fashion school. And she's really into the 1960s. Like she's obsessed with the era, the music. And over the course of the film, she slowly begins to find herself being transported back to that time in her dreams, and to find her perspective being aligned with another young woman from that period named Eloise. And in the very first time that this sort of dream time travel happens, Sandy, played by Thomasin McKenzie, follows Eloise to a nightclub. And over the course of this entire sequence, Edgar Wright pulls just some really amazing trickery with the camera, where they're essentially, we see them in reflection. So Eloise is looking into a mirror, but instead of seeing her own reflection, she sees Sandy, and vice versa. And there are all these shots where the entire time I was sitting and watching, I was like, I'm not sure how he's doing this, because it's all in camera. There's no green screen. There's no digital trickery going on. It's all somehow he plays with the angles and with the production design and the set to make them simultaneously kind of inhabiting the same space while also not. And it culminates in the sequence where Eloise is dancing with a man played by Matt Smith. And it's all done in a single take. And in over the course of this single take, we see Matt Smith dancing with first Eloise, and then all of a sudden he twirls her, and suddenly Sandy is the person that he's dancing with. And over the course of this shot, we switch back and forth between Sandy and Eloise multiple times. And the entire time, like at this point, my jaw was on the floor. I could not figure out how Wright was doing this. And it's not only a bravura piece of filmmaking, it also does a lot to develop the premise of the film, which is that Sandy and Eloise are aligned somehow, and that their identities are merging and becoming porous. And that's really established by this shot. But just the magic on display there was really galvanizing. And I'd highly recommend any listeners who are interested in kind of the nuts and bolts of filmmaking. There's Edgar Wright did one of those anatomy of the scene features with, I think, the New York Times. You can find it on YouTube, where he talks about how they did this scene and how basically all of it was he just had a really great camera operator, a really great director of photography, and they just knew what they were doing and knew how to get these shots. And I think it's a wonderful scene in isolation. I think it makes the film as a whole very interesting to watch, even though it has flaws. I think the film is just fascinating. And yeah, I don't know. I think that if you love movies, one of the things you probably love is just seeing places where an artist just lets loose and shows you what he can really do. And that's what I think Edgar Wright does in that scene.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because like even a weak Edgar Wright film still kind of slaps, doesn't it?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's not his best film. It's not his best film that he made this year, but scenes like that are just really amazing. And to see that happen throughout the film. And I think probably one of my quibbles with the movie is that we lose some of the fantastic elements as we move throughout the picture, and it becomes a little more real worldish. And I love those early scenes. I thought they were fantastic.
See, that was what I liked about the film. That's why I thought, and actually, funny story. So, I mean, by the time we release this, I'll have released my top 10 on Screenfish, and one of my, I think it was my number 6 moment or something, is the descent on the staircase, because that entire sequence from the moment she exits the room or enters the nightclub, it's just unreal. Like it is just gorgeous and it is just incredible. But see, what I liked about the film, people have asked me to describe it. It's almost impossible to sort of describe the style. It's a nostalgia film. It's a horror film. It's a Me Too film. It's a ghost story. It's so many things, and the styles shift throughout the film. And so, talk about it being more real world at the end. That's one of the things I liked, because I felt the whole point of the majesty of that moment is essentially that this is supposed to be a fantasy, but then we start to see and dig underneath it and see what a nightmare is really going on underneath. And it's just a wild film. It was easily one of my favorite films of the year, just because of how incredibly creative and well choreographed it was.
Yeah, and I think you nail kind of an element of what, when you come across a great scene in a movie or a great movie, it's often hard to articulate like in words exactly why it works. It's the definition of you had to be there. You just have to see it. And that's really what movies are all about, is you have to see them. And I think seems like this one that just capture this weird dreamlike quality that you can't quite put into words is a great example of that.
Yeah. Anybody else directed this picture, it's almost like unwatchable or just extremely cliche. But Edgar Wright doing it is something unique, and I enjoyed it. Even though I thought it was one of his weaker pictures, I enjoyed it.
I'd like to go on record here that Kevin, I just heard Wade say that if Steven Spielberg made this movie, it would be trash. That's what I just heard.
I mean, you are technically
the story
correct.
Would look very different. The story would look very different, right?
You are technically correct, Steve. The best kind of correct.
The best kind of correct.
Kevin described this scene, this intricate scene, full of detail and all this sort of craftsmanship. And that's what we've come to love. Some of the things we've come to love about movies. The scene, my favorite scene of the year, is actually a little bit different. It's actually a moment that's sort of just captured by happenstance. So my favorite movie of the year, and I categorized it as a movie, is The Beatles Get Back by Peter Jackson. And we get to see the Beatles record their album, Let It Be. And the project kind of goes through a number of iterations. At first, they're going to write an album and then record a live show, and the live show will be the album, and they'll make a movie from it. And things changed, moved around, and ultimately we got their big rooftop concert that was eventually shut down, and then their album that they released last, which is Let It Be. But as they're sort of writing this album, it's fantastic to see what goes into art. Kevin, we reviewed Bohemian Rhapsody, and I remember we're talking about that scene where Rami Malek, he's like in the kitchen and he's like, oh yeah, and it's like he wrote like this whole song. It's stupid, and in this film you see like the seed of a song, and you see these individuals working on it, and then they play another song by somebody else, and then they play one of their old songs, and they come back and work on it, and then a week later they're working on it again, and then they record it. You really have an opportunity to look into this window of artistic creation. And in one of my favorite scenes, Paul McCartney he's on the piano and he's kind of just playing around, and he starts to play the piano music for Let It Be, and he's kind of trying to figure it out. And his road manager, at one time bodyguard, Mal Evans, is kind of there the whole time. They're kind of helping him in the band. So he's writing down music, he's writing down lyrics as they are coming up with them. And he's kind of like chatting to Paul. And on the other side of the room, I believe it's John and some members of the band and someone else, and they're kind of talking about the project and like, well, what do we do? And is this an album? Is this a movie? One guy keeps wanting to go to Africa and record this. Like, he's just like, I gotta go. And while all that's going on, Paul's just playing the piano, and Mal is kind of talking to him. And it's amazing because obviously Let It Be, I know at this point, Let It Be has been written. I've heard the song. We've all heard the song. But yet, as I'm viewing this scene, I'm thinking to myself, Mal, stop talking. Like, you're gonna mess this up. He's trying to write Let It Be. He's figuring out the music. And it just highlights the precarious nature of art. And we've all had those moments. All of us have written before. We've done podcasts. We've done work before where we wanted to stop writing, and we're like, well, I'll give it another 10 minutes. And we ended up writing for 20 minutes, and we wrote something that we really liked. And we think back and say to ourselves, if I would have stopped, would that have even come about? And as you watch this film, as you watch Paul kind of later on or actually I think it's earlier in the movie, start playing Get Back for the first time, you realize that good art, almost all good art, almost wasn't created. And it's fascinating to just kind of watch that and see that happen. One of my favorite moments of the year for film, and also just a really tense moment, even though, like I said, I already know the song was written. I guess I was just worried, like, what would he lose it? But yeah, it's a great scene, great project.
Yeah, you've been a big booster for this movie, Wade, and it's making me think that I need to make a special effort to seek it out, because when I first heard about it, I was like, this kind of seems like, maybe it's just for, Beatles diehards or people who already know a lot and kind of have a lot of context for what they're going to see. But it sounds like it has a lot more to give than that for people of all backgrounds, even those who aren't like super into Beatles lore.
Yeah, I've heard of people who are like, I wasn't really into the Beatles, and the idea of watching like 8 hours of this, like I didn't know I could do that. And then they watch it and they're like, wow, like that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty special project, and it's unfortunate it doesn't count, Wade, because it streamed on Disney Plus, and it's a series. And no,
I'll say this. Bright Wall Dark Room has it on their list of they talk to all their writers and contributors and editors, and it ended up making like number 5 on their list. So it counts somewhere, right? The experts say it does.
No, it really is. Honestly, it does feel like a film. And I totally stand by it. I just like throwing shade on it. It's actually it is an incredible experience I think when we chatted about it, you and I were chatting about it last time, I don't feel like it's going to win over any super fans or anybody who isn't a fan in the sense that if you really don't like them, it does amount to people playing guitar for, fiddling with chords, but there is something magical about this experience of watching, arguably the greatest band who has ever recorded music, watching them create something. Again, we were talking about not John Wick, we were talking about a pig and the creation of a meal. There's something magical about creating, isn't there? It's just incredible. And I mean, I've been a Beatles fan for years, and there were things in this that I'd never seen before. Conversations I didn't know were taking place because we'd only heard about them, and these moments where they just are sort of playing together, such a beautiful window into who they really were. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, and you get done with it, and you're like, I mean, I didn't watch this over one night. It was multiple nights, and it just, you feel like I kind of like lost my friends because you're just used to just kind of hanging out with them, and so yeah, it's a great project.
Yeah, it's a great pick. My number one is actually from a very, very similar film. It's from Julie Ducournau's Titan, which is the spiritual sequel to Get Back in many, many ways. No, they're very different projects.
Very different.
And to be perfectly honest, Titan is one of those films that I didn't expect would leave a mark. I thought it would leave a mark. I didn't realize the mark. No, honestly, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the project, the film is absolutely wild, absolutely insane. It's about a young woman who suffers from a car accident in her youth and is traumatized. A metal plate is left in her head, and she ends up as an adult getting impregnated by her car, which is not.
It happens.
It happens. I mean, you have to be careful about such things. And goes on a murder spree after this has taken place. It is violent, it is graphic, it is nuts. And I remember getting the call to review it, and the first 20 minutes into this film, I'm sitting here saying, how on earth am I going to make it for the next 100? Like, what am I doing here? Do I, this is just too much for me. But out of those moments, she goes on the run and sort of becomes the adopted child of this firefighter, and what it becomes one of the most stunning modern representation of the prodigal son story in scripture that I have ever seen. Now, to anyone hearing this, you need to know that the film is often quite traumatic in any number of ways. But I'll tell you, the final scene of the film, she's giving birth to this child that she's conceived, and the fireman knows now that she is not his long lost child. He knows that, but he sees that she's in trouble, and she gives birth, and he takes the child as his own, not as in he takes it away from her, but he takes the child as his own, and he's going to care for it no matter what, no matter how this child was conceived, no matter how insane the circumstances surrounding the birth, no matter who the mother is, he's going to accept this child as his own. And it's deeply touching. And for a film that is in such a wild package, it really, that moment truly affected me deeply this year. Have either of you had the experience No, wait, it's just
no, but my mind is running right now because I'm like, does the child have wheels for legs? Like, what does this really look like?
I wish it did. It would have been kind of cool. It ends up having just sort of metal studs down its back. It's a human child with
I mean, I have a screener for this film, and I want to see it. Knowing enough about it, whenever it came time to sort of like, okay, I've got a couple hours, I can watch one of the screeners that I have. I would look at that screener and be like, but am I really going to be able to stomach a movie about, with this kind of content in it? And I always end up moving on to something else. But that's your description of that scene is very, very compelling to me. And so I'm very curious to finally make time for it.
Watch it with your wife and son, over just
no, not doing that.
No, I honestly, like, there's some wild dialogue in this film. I honestly, if I could stomach getting other people to discuss this film or to make them watch it, like, there is a scene where the fireman comes out and says, and all the other firemen, he's the head fireman, the other firemen in the hall are sort of like are sort of cruel and bullies to this newcomer, and he says, "Who am I to you? I'm God." And what does that make him? Makes him Jesus. Don't touch him. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, pardon? That was I sat there, I'm like,
excuse me.
That was when my eyebrows raised, and I went, what? And it's unbelievable. It is something else. It will.
Yeah.
Sounds like it'd make a great double feature with Darren Aronofsky's mother,
or Annette. I feel like another 2021 film. Maybe that's funny.
We can't be too hard on her. Yeah.
You have my attention. Like, I'm probably gonna watch it now at some point.
I don't know how to prep you anymore in advance for how bizarre this movie is. Nuts. It's nuts.
Nice.
Cool. But I couldn't understand how it was. I think it won it. Did it win at Cannes? I think it did. I think it took the Palme d'Or.
Wow.
No, it's at Venice. I always get them all confused, but I think it took top prize. And I remember saying, how? Like, this woman been impregnated by her car. Now I get it.
Now you get it. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. That's cool.
It's not a movie I expect to be up for Best Picture, but I'll tell you right now, it left a mark.
Wow. I will say this: I'm a little disappointed that nobody here chose Bradley Cooper's scene in Licorice Pizza as one of the best scenes of the year, because that was incredible. That was one of the funniest moments of 2021 for me.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I haven't seen Licorice Pizza yet.
Yeah, I've seen Licorice Pizza. It kind of left me cold, to be honest. Even that scene, I was just sort of like, it's okay. I was amused by it, but I don't know if I could go much farther than that.
Yeah, I liked it. Licorice Pizza was my number 11. I had a pretty good time. I liked kind of the hangout vibe of it, but yeah, good picks. All of y'all had great picks.
Yeah, you're right. This was so much fun. I really appreciated this. Doing the movie moments is so much fun. But we still need to talk about Power of the Dog. But I'm thinking maybe we should take a break, come back fresh, guys. We'll come back for round 2, spend the right time on Power of the Dog, and do it right. So for you at home, look for part 2 of our 2021 movie review, or 2021 year in review, but also focusing entirely on Jane Campion's Power of the Dog.